Launch games are often some of the most discussed and debated games of all time. The jewel at the start of a new gaming era, console launch games are designed to show off the capabilities and possibilities of new gaming hardware. Nintendo launch games have a special place in history, often being groundbreaking additions to long-loved Nintendo series. In recent years, the Zelda series has taken the mantle of providing the spark to your new console purchases, with Twilight Princess on the Wii and Breath of the Wild on the Switch. But before that, it was up to Mario to brave the path forward with the next leap in gaming experiences. The original Super Mario Bros., although not a day one launch title, became the de facto pack-in with the original Nintendo. Our first step into the Mushroom Kingdom, it showed the world how to platform gracefully and set the standard for the next decade. With the arrival of the Super Nintendo, expectations were high for the next step in graphics and gameplay to come. Super Mario World would take us into the 16-bit generation in more style, colours with better control and bigger levels and worlds to explore. It was considered the apex of console gaming on release. We were all truly spoiled with the first Nintendo series transition to a new console generation, a trend that luckily for everyone would continue. When the 3D generation came around in the mid-90s, Mario 64 was there to launch the Nintendo 64 and again break boundaries of graphics and gameplay.
It's me, Mario!
3D games had a rough start with the Saturn and PlayStation launches, but Nintendo again set the standard with Mario 64 and showed the world how to 3D platform. With the turn of the new millennium, a more powerful 3D capable hardware on the way with the PlayStation 2, Xbox and Nintendo's own GameCube, the gaming world fully expected their favourite plumber will be there, with them, to take gaming to the next level. But Nintendo decided to look elsewhere to take the responsibility of the 128-bit era. But they didn't look very far. Mario's brother Luigi would take centre stage for the GameCube's launch in 2001. But if gamers were expecting a next-gen 3D platformer from Luigi, they were in for a shock. The Luigi-focused game was not the fast-paced action platformer that had captained the previous 3 consoles. It was very different indeed. Luigi's Mansion launched alongside the GameCube in November of 2001, and straight away it was obvious that this is a different kind of game. Luigi's Mansion. Not world, or land, or 64, but mansion. The entire game is set inside a spooky, dark and creepy mansion that Luigi has won in a contest. When he arrives, it is very different to how he imagined it. Also, it's very different to what many of the audience members had imagined for a next generation Mario Bros. Title.
Mario!
Gone are the bright colours and characters, shiny blocks and roaming green hills of the Mushroom Kingdom from the previous Mario Bros. Titles. The mansion is surrounded by a dark, damp and thick atmosphere. The story puts Luigi as the hero this time, being tasked with saving Mario from the evil King Boo, who has tricked Mario and Luigi to come in to the mansion. But luckily, For Luigi, Professor E. Gadd, a renowned inventor and ghost expert, has stationed himself on site at the mansion to investigate the strange goings-on. He is also able to assist Luigi in tackling the mansion's many traps and ghosts within. This brings us to maybe the biggest shock for the audience: just how this game plays. Ghosts are ghosts, obviously. They are tricky things to deal with in the Mario universe and cause mostly instant death whenever they have been tackled in previous Mario games. So, jumping on them is out of the question. Luckily, Professor E. Gadd is on hand with the Poltergust 3000, which Luigi uses to suck up the ghosts throughout, after stunning them with a flashlight. It kinda reminds me of, Anyway, so that means that jumping is gone. Completely. From a Mario Brothers launch game. Unacceptable! Yes, quite. This was a big shock for the gaming community upon launch. It was not the action platformer we have become accustomed to starting our new generation with. Instead, Luigi's Mansion is a slower but more exploration and puzzle based game. Luigi doesn't even run, well, not really. Instead, the main gameplay loop involves exploring rooms, finding ghosts, catching ghosts, finding keys, and moving on to the next room. This is very different from either the left to right 2D or the goal-based 3D levels of previous Mario games. Luigi's Mansion slows everything down, giving you puzzle-based objectives. Most rooms have a character or gallery ghost to capture in order to progress in the game. The room requires you to solve a puzzle to get the gallery ghost in a vulnerable state in order to catch them. These puzzles are very creative and require you to poke around in every corner of the room, interacting with objects and scenery in order to progress, usually by obtaining a key or items to move on. There are 3 levels to the mansion and a basement area. The game is relatively small, but there is a sense of place that comes over you when you're playing. This is a building that could exist. It's properly proportioned and makes perfect sense for navigating around. Well, sort of. As you move from room to room, you collect money in the form of coins, as in previous Mario games, but also dollar bills, gems, rubies and gold bars. This is added together in a scoring system for each area and encourages you to open every drawer and prod and push everything in the mansion in order to find as much money as possible. So the gameplay was very different to previous Mario Brothers games, but the setting and surroundings in Luigi's Mansion brought a new edge to Nintendo's arsenal, a cutting edge. This would be the last time Nintendo could claim that they had one of the most graphically advanced games in the world upon release, and Luigi's Mansion was truly groundbreaking in the visual department. The slower paced room-to-room gameplay allowed the developers to fill each of these puzzle boxes with a crazy amount of detail. Every wall, floor and ceiling is bursting with character. The lighting system used was a huge step forward, allowing real-time shadows and dynamic lighting. This was new for console gaming and wouldn't become standard until the 360 PS3 generation, 5 years later. The characters now show true emotions and expression. No longer are 3D characters lifeless and stiff, as in the previous generations. Enemies are not copy and paste throughout the game anymore. Every gallery ghost and boss is unique, fueling your need to explore the mansion with a desire to uncover all the individual characters that are hidden around the mansion. The ghost effects themselves are very impressive. For the time, the transparencies were light years ahead of anything else, and particle effects that fly dust everywhere. On top of all the eye candy, there is also a physics system in place used to solve puzzles and manipulate objects. This means everything in the game is interactive and moves as you prod and poke every corner of every room in order to progress. A far cry from the flat and square surroundings that we had before. It's a true joy to explore the mansion, and it's a far cry from the colour-filled levels and action-based themes Nintendo had got so right in previous launch games. You could say that they took a risk with the darker theme for Luigi's Mansion, but in hindsight, they knew that Mario's next game would be a tangoed explosion of colour and sunshine in, well, Mario Sunshine. The two games offset each other really well, but both of them feel like they're in the same universe. But just how well were people going to react to this darker take on the Mario Brothers franchise? The game sold well, but it sold slowly. At the end of the GameCube's life, Luigi's Mansion had sold 3.3 million copies. The response to the game upon release was not up to the standards of previous Nintendo launches either. Reviewers praised its style and graphics, but complained about its length, only being around 5 hours, with little in the way of doing things out of order. They also complained about the controls being unfamiliar and taking time to learn. With the joy of the game being discovering things for the first time, there is pretty much zero replay value, apart from finding as much money as possible in every area to max out your score. Luigi's Mansion was a risk, but it was also a test. Nintendo used it as a tech demo to show the public and the press the power of their new cubed box. In that aspect, it delivered, maybe too well. Even at the end of the GameCube's life, Luigi's Mansion was still considered one of the best looking games on the system. The focus on flash and style, though, pulled away from the gameplay side of development. Things had to be slowed down in order for the technology to shine. In my opinion, Luigi's Mansion has aged better than most games. As gamers' tastes have changed and expanded since the early 2000s, the style of game that Luigi's Mansion was then is now accepted and asked for more often. And because of the detail and the care that went into Luigi's Mansion at the time, this makes it kind of timeless.